The Pokemon TV series may often be criticized for having a more formulaic approach to storytelling, but every once in a while, it seems like they just throw an oddball in our direction, and things can get really, really bizarre, maybe even cursed. So today we wanted to take a look at some of the freakiest or weirdest episodes in the entire Pokemon anime that just may leave you wondering what show you're even watching at that point. Like, for instance, let's just start at Hocus Pokemon, which came out in 2003 and took place during the Johto series. This is that cursed episode that brought us all Ashichu for no reason. The entire episode is actually pretty standard formulaic Pokemon, but at the very end, one of the characters that Ash and friends help out with is a magician, and just for a magic trick, decides to turn Ash into a Pikachu at the very end of the episode, and it's just really, really awkward. I mean, Ash just talks like normal and they just continue on with their adventure just the way things are. At the beginning of the next episode, in the first minute or so, Ash reverts back to being a normal human as the spell wore off. And that was that with Ashichu. It was just this short little ending that carried over to the very beginning of the next episode and then was just completely forgotten about afterwards. But the most bizarre part is definitely how casual and normal that seems to them, that one of them literally just got turned into a Pokemon and they're just carrying about their day. Another really interesting episode, to say the least, is Address Unknown, which is another Johto era Pokemon episode. And we've talked about this episode in the Talking Pokemon video, but we didn't go into detail about some of the other parts of this episode. First of all, Ash and friends are transported into a dimensional area, something that they conclude is somehow Ash's Larvitar's conscience. And it's really weird. They're just like floating in the void. Then a giant Pikachu and Togepi come by and they jump on and ride on top of Pikachu's head and Togepi respectively. They then have to go and figure out Larvitar's innermost fears or something and try to fix it or help Larvitar from the inside out. It is a trip. It's a very psychologically confusing episode, to say the least. This next one's more of a personal favorite, but Superhero Secret is definitely a unique episode. It's still a little formulaic, but we see the introduction of Gligarman, which is like a play on Batman, except instead of a bat, it's the Pokemon Gligar. And the mystery over who this character's identity is a major plot point, but it's very obvious the entire way through. Although sometimes it's not always obvious to everyone involved, which kind of leans into why this episode is so funny and bizarre at the same time. There is a cool moment though where they watch an episode of Gligarman, and we get to see this giant monster that kind of looks like a Beedrill, but it's definitely not a Beedrill, which is kind of cool just because we don't see something non-Pokemon related too often. But yeah, Gligarman definitely stands out a bit, and if you're looking for some odd Pokemon episodes to watch with friends, this one's highly recommended. There's also the X and Y episode, Dream a Little Dream of Me, which is also just another very bizarre episode because Darkrai is involved in it, and it haunts some dreams of Meowth and Pikachu, and they're running around, and they're confused, and there's this fire monster, but then Ash and friends are turned into Pokemon, and they're just talking like it's normal, and they can evolve and devolve at free will. They try fighting the fire monster, and it's not too effective, and this whole episode just concludes with nothing really happening, but it definitely is a really weird trip. There's this episode called Where No Togepi Has Gone Before, which takes place during the Diamond and Pearl era, and this episode has nothing to do with Misty's Togepi, though they may have kind of trained a lot of viewers into just thinking of Togepi as this light-hearted, nice Pokemon, but they straight up meet an evil Togepi. And honestly, there's no conclusion as to why this Togepi's evil. It's just straight up just an evil Pokemon that stays evil through and through the entire episode. It's constantly playing tricks on everyone and manipulating them. Seriously, this Togepi does not mess around. At one point, it uses the Attract ability to completely brainwash Pikachu, Piplup, and a couple other Pokemon, and then hijack a spaceship to go into outer space. Rayquaza shows up, then they have to try to figure out how they're going to survive and crash land the spaceship. It's absolutely hilarious, and it makes no sense whatsoever, and they never explain any of it. We watched the next episode hoping we would get more about Togepi, and Togepi's just nowhere in that episode. So, it's definitely a hidden gem amongst Pokemon episodes. There's also the episode Historical Mystery Tour, which is a unique episode just because it involves Ash, Dawn, and Barry, who shows up in this episode, where somehow, some way, they're shrunk in size. It's like a Honey, I Shrunk the Kids type episode. And there's just really bizarre moments going on. There's Ash, who's very small, who relies on riding on Pikachu to get away from a flock of Spearow, kind of mirroring the very first episode ever of Pokemon. Dawn's Piplup is kind of hilariously large in size, even though it's just Piplup's normal size, but in comparison to Dawn, it just looks awkward. And once again, it's one of those episodes where it's just treated like, oh, another day on a Pokemon journey, not some terrifying event that causes them to shrink in size that they'll forever remember for the rest of their lives. Okay, then this next one is so far out there, but it actually comes from the recent Pokemon Journeys series. This is actually in the form of 2 episodes, Splash Dash and Smash for the Crown, and Slowking's Crowning, which actually is the first time in all of Pokemon history where there is 2 short episodes combined into one regular episode. So instead of one 22-minute or so long episode, they did 2 11-minute episodes, and both of them are bizarre. The first one involves Go trying to get his Magikarp ready to win a Magikarp high jump competition, and it's just so bizarre the antics that get involved in a Magikarp jumping competition. There's some very intense training, there's some cursed frames of Ash and Go being super ready for the competition alongside Magikarp, all with 6-packs, including Magikarp with 6-packs. It then later is revealed in the finals that Go's Magikarp has weights attached to it, which were holding it back, and when it releases the weights, the Magikarp jumps so high, not only destroying the entire competition, but also zooms up into the sky, into the atmosphere, and just doesn't come back down. And that's it. The episode just ends, Magikarp is gone. Yeah. It's an absolutely hilarious episode that then leads into the second episode in this episode, which is called Slowking's Crowning, and it involves Ash and Go on some Slowpoke Island, but essentially one of the Shelder crowns lands on Ash's head, which leads to just this really, really odd moment where Ash has a British accent, and even in the Japanese version, there's some weird English accent being added onto the character, but even the American version is completely hilarious and bizarre. I mean, just look at this.
Are you alright?
I've never felt better. Feeling chipper, as you please.
The episode then just gets more chaotic, where the crown is landing on various different characters, all having the same reaction to having the crown on their head. And this is just a great mix of really fun voice acting and writing, and also really good animation that just looks goofy and hilarious at the same time. This cycle of them constantly switching who's wearing the crown is also pretty funny, and it only then gets broken up by Go's Magikarp finally coming out of the atmosphere in space, landing and breaking up the whole instance, which is just a very unexpected twist, which kind of does resolve the last episode in a very unique way, and it's just seriously one of the greatest episodes in all of Pokemon history. Okay, then there's the episode Gulpin It Down, which was during the Ruby and Sapphire era, and this episode's unique, because nowhere back in the day did you think you would just randomly have an episode where one of Ash's Pokemon becomes giant and is the size of a building, and is just fighting another giant Pokemon, and they're just kind of duking it out. And mind you, this is way back before Gigantamax and Dynamaxing Pokemon were a thing. This is just something that happens because plot-wise they thought it would be fun. It's cool. It definitely has these Godzilla-type vibes where you see these giant fighting monsters in a very populated city, but it's definitely a standout episode because it just has a lot going on that you wouldn't necessarily think of on a normal basis. And then, of course, this is a classic episode from the earlier days, but definitely when this episode aired, it was the bizarre episode in the Pokemon franchise, but all the way back in Season 1, the Psychic Showdown episode had some really spooky, creepy vibes to it. Essentially, Ash goes to challenge Sabrina, the gym leader in Saffron City, and the agreement of the battle is Ash and friends has to play with Sabrina if he loses the battle. Well, knowing Ash, he ends up getting wrecked, and what Sabrina had in mind for them all playing together was turning them into dolls and putting them inside of her dollhouse. and it's just very, very creepy. They're in the house. They realize that there's not a real person in there, that all the food is fake, and then the doll tries to murder them with a giant ball. But fortunately enough, they're saved by what may be Sabrina's father. But then he's kind of mean to them too, using psychic powers to humiliate Ash. I don't fully understand that part. Nonetheless, he ends up helping them and kind of directs Ash and friends in the direction of where he needs to go to get a ghost Pokemon that could help defeat Sabrina. But all in all, this episode was kind of unique. And then the episode where Ash does end up getting a ghost Pokemon is an episode where he literally dies, gets pulled out of his body, and then he flies around a bit until one of the Pokemon decides to join him, then he comes back to life. Maybe we should talk about that in another video. But anyways, have you seen all of these episodes? Which one is the most bizarre to you, or is there one that's not on this list that always stood out as a kid or as an adult watching back some of the Pokemon episodes? Let us know your thoughts in the comments down below. Also, make sure you are subscribed with notifications on so you don't miss any of our future uploads. We'll see you all next time with a brand new video.